podcast. This is our first podcast. This is so exciting. I'm Mary Gandy, and I am based out of Tucson, Arizona, and I'm the founder and one of the coaches here at Blue Fire.
And I am Courtney and and I'm based out of Long Beach, California. I have been a Blue Fire athlete since 2013, and I've been coaching with Blue Fire since 2024. And our goal with this podcast is to have a chance to talk about some of the concepts and ideas that we want to share with our athletes. And today, we're going to just introduce the idea of Blue Fire. So, to get started, Mary, you started Blue Fire. How did Blue Fire come about?
Well, I had to go back into Facebook today to go through a whole bunch of pictures, which was wonderful and brought back so many memories as I was looking at the history of Blue Fire. It began out of really another career that I was in. I was in law enforcement, and I was ready to leave law enforcement and looking to do something different. And I've always loved physical exercise and fitness, and really felt passionate about helping people on their own fitness journeys. And so I was looking into, getting into the fitness industry. And I got my personal training certification. And in 2009, I did a certification through USAT, which is USA Triathlon. And just started in the garage of our house. My husband transformed our garage into a gym. It was awesome. We had cabinets and mats and workout equipment, and it started with a few people that were interested, and they would show up faithfully on early morning hours. I'm sure to the joy of my neighbors, who might not have woken up as early as we were, but we would meet and do a personal training. My friend Darlene was incredibly supportive of me getting started with a junior triathlon team, and so we started that junior triathlon team. I believe that junior team started also in 2009. And at that time, we were in Snohomish, Washington. Well, actually, I was in Lake Stevens, but we were in the Snohomish community, and there was a new bicycle shop that started in downtown Snohomish called Snohomish Bicycles. And I went in there one day and talked to Martin, the owner, and he was so open and just willing to help me out as a new coach. And so we started doing some just kind of small talks or conversations where people were invited in to learn more about triathlon. And that was mostly the sport that I was doing at the time, some running and getting into triathlon. And really from there, this community just grew between the team and the friends that were coming and working out at the house and the bicycle shop. It really just grew. And Courtney, you were asking me when we were first, talking about this, what is Blue Fire? And as I thought about that question, I just thought out what Blue Fire really, well, it is like my coaching business, and now our coaching business is, it was just this amazing community, and it just kept growing. It grew so much that my husband Eric and I started looking at building space to actually move the gym out of the house so that we could have more people. And then he transformed that space into a beautiful, beautiful space. We had AstroTurf to work out on, and we had one of those infinity swimming pools. And a couple other things that happened around that time was we started, for 2 years, we did a 5K in Snohomish called the Fire Prevention 5K. And really that came out of our close relationship with the fire department, in that my husband worked at the fire department. And that also brings us to the name. I meant to mention that earlier. Where did this name come from? When I first started the business, it was Mary Gandy Fitness. And And I had a little, I think I had like some flowery type of logo. And one of my athletes, he said, maybe we could have, something just like a little more, I don't know. Do you remember the word I described that as, Courtney? Just like
Was it girly? Less girly?
less girly? Yeah, something less girly. Like I said, okay. And I thought, well, I've come from this career in law enforcement. My husband was in a career in the fire service, and so Blue Fire just it just stuck. And we at that point we had also had a lot of athletes who were through knowing them in our careers were part of Blue Fire. So it was a really good fit, and it's just stayed. Blue Fire continued on in 2012. Courtney joined, or 2012. We were just talking about that today, whether it was 2012 or 2013. I think it was 2013. Um, Courtney joined, and Courtney, I want you to share a little bit because you were, what, a junior in high school at that time?
Yeah, I was a junior in high school. I had just gotten back into running. I'd originally wanted to give up running and try some other sport, but I ended up staying in running. And one of my very close friends had joined your junior team in 2012. And on your junior team, you had some really excellent athletes, especially from Snohomish. And so my friend was really excited for me to join. So that way there was someone a little bit more on her level and we could do it together. But at the time, so it was triathlon junior team. And at the time, I didn't know how to swim and I didn't have a bike. And I was like, sure, why not? It sounds fun. I'm here for an adventure. And so I just remember like being in the pool and you teaching me how to swim. And I'm just like going through the pool with my legs straight down, like a raft. Like I'm not moving fast. And I actually used your bike. I named it Pumpkin, your orange bike, and I kept it up until a couple months ago when it got stolen. But that bike served me well. And so that was my start with triathlon and working with Blue Fire. And so I raced with you my junior and senior year, where my senior year I got to do my first Olympic distance and I loved it. And then going into college, I went to the University of Washington where I joined their triathlon team. And then later on to grad school at University of California, Irvine, where I joined their triathlon team. And I really enjoyed triathlon because of being able to switch up the sports. And if you got tired of one, you could do the other. But moving down to Irvine, California, we lived within a mile of about 100 miles of trails. And so I naturally started getting into a little bit of trail running. And so I reconnected with you. So we had our 2 years of junior team and then off to college and we stayed in contact. But we really reconnected when I decided that I wanted to do my first half Ironman. And that was in Santa Cruz. And so we started working together again. And that happened in 2021, possibly.
I think so.
Yeah. And so, and then from there, I got really into trail running. And so started working with you for trail running and ultra running. And from there, we have done, I've joined you for Black Canyon a couple years. And then I've trained for some of my own races and efforts. And then through the triathlon team and trail running, that's kind of how I got into coaching. I am really into like the science and the problem solving side of coaching. I have a science background. And so playing around with training plans, how to optimize your body, nutrition, that sort of thing. I have a lot of fun with that. And that's kind of what led me into coaching. And I think we fit well together because we have a lot of the same bases and values in coaching. And I don't know if that comes just from us as our personalities or us as you have been my coach since I was a child. But that's how we came to this point where I get to be coaching alongside you. And I did my first coaching for a trail run in 24.
So amazing. I was thinking about that. They coaching you as a youth athlete, and you were always really easy to coach because you just had a really good natural intuition about where to push yourself and push hard, but then also making good decisions with your training and with your health as you were training. And then I found that again to be true when we started working together in 2021 and coaching you in 2021 and thinking, Courtney doesn't really need me to do this to coach her because your instincts were there. And so it just has become such a natural fit to start working together as coaches. So I think a lot of it is just came from within you and the things you care about and things you study and the science that you study that you foundationally understand. Like, why do I need to eat enough? Why do I need to rest? And when to do that. I think that's fabulous. Would you feel like, okay, this is kind of a random question because we didn't, but I was thinking about this. We didn't prepare for this question, but as you were talking about your journey when you started the junior team, how do you feel like having triathlon introduced into your life as a young person? How do you feel like that helped you and benefited you throughout from then until now?
Yeah, I think triathlon is so dynamic compared to running. There's so many different components. You can't just focus on one aspect of it. You have to focus on how they all go together because they're all important. For example, I am, of the three parts of triathlon, swim is my slowest. I'm not a swimmer. I do enjoy the water, but I've found at some races where I could have made up to 15 minutes throughout the race. If I had trained a little bit harder on the run, I could have gained about 5 minutes. Trained a little bit harder on the swim, I could have gotten back 10 minutes. And so the different components of triathlon are each important in their own way. And so you can't let one kind of go to the side. And I think the same can be said for running, because running by itself is not going to get you to the best point in running. You have to do so many other things that go into it, like nutrition, strength training, that sort of thing. And so I think doing triathlon kind of showed me how important combining different aspects of training can help benefit a single activity. And the amount of training you have to do for triathlon, depending on the distance, but say like the half Ironman, you have to be very dedicated and you have to think through, like, again, your nutrition and stuff. So I think triathlon just helped me learn how to bring different components together, and it can be used in a lot of different aspects of training and life. And so I really appreciated trying triathlon and stuff.
I love that. Yeah. Well, speaking of triathlon, I had started doing some triathlons before I started coaching, but then started doing longer distances and ended up doing my first Ironman in 2012 and then my second full in 2014, which you came to, I think there were a few of you from the junior team that came over, which was so much fun.
Yeah, we volunteered at it.
Oh, that's right. You guys volunteered. Yeah, you had like a whole crew. That was great. And then in 2015, our family moved. We moved across the mountains to about 2.5 hours away from where we were living. And I was at a point in my life that I was decided to discontinue doing the junior team. We had that last summer, I think that summer that I moved. And you guys were heading off to college, and we moved. And that was really where I also found the trails at that time in my life, because our house in Wenatchee was just about mile and a half, I think, from the base of a huge trail system. And I was experiencing some things in triathlon that I think I was just ready to do something different, and just being out on the trails and running and not that that didn't happen in the training for triathlon, it was just different. And that I just found such a renewed joy in endurance sport. But Blue Fire kind of just kept going. And I didn't do a lot of coaching at that time, but I still had a few people that I coached. And then we ended up actually moving to Alaska, into this small fishing village in Alaska. And I remember one of my athletes, it's such a beautiful thing having a community, because people became more than just athletes and teammates. They became my really good friends. And they became good friends with each other. It's incredible to see friendships that are out in the world today that I didn't make that happen or anything like that, but because of that team and that community, those people came together and have those friendships now. And one of those friends, I lived in a really small, isolated community. It was a fabulous, beautiful place, but it was hard to get as much fitness in, and it was also during COVID. And I had brought my bike and my trainer, and I could get enough Wi-Fi to use Zwift. And so, but I couldn't actually talk to her. I couldn't also have enough Wi-Fi to be, online with her. I could only text. And so we would get up early mornings and be on Zwift together, and texting conversation. And so that it was just so beautiful how that thread of endurance sport and Blue Fire continued on. Until we ended up moving from Alaska here to Tucson, and that was when I started coaching you. And I remember, and then you came out. I was so excited because when I was doing Black Canyon really came out of that transition from life in Alaska to a life here, of this goal and having this goal of doing a long endurance race. Just helping me navigate that transition. And you were the first person that came to mind of who would I want to have alongside of me for 50K. Well, it wasn't quite 50K of that race at that time, but pretty much,
Yeah.
And I remember that conversation so well. Both years were fabulous. I think it was that first year that we just had the conversation and realized, oh, we're not coach and junior athlete anymore. We are friends, and this is so cool. And so
Yeah, and I
that
think
was,
for me also that was a interesting transition, because I met you as a kid. I was a young, 16, 15, but still a kid, and that dynamic between a young person and an athlete, it's very much so like there's a distinction in your positions. I'm an athlete, you are the coach, and that is the end. And you're an adult, and I'm a child.
exactly.
And so I think it was really cool for me too to realize that we were friends, and that we're both adults now. And I don't know when that happened,
Been
but
trying to figure it out for myself.
yeah, but it's so cool to have that relationship evolve and to get to this point where now we're colleagues. And it's really cool. And also, one of the thoughts that came to my head while you were chatting about that is, this idea that we've talked about where Blue Fire, that is us coaching, but Blue Fire is also a community. And it's kind of a community you've developed over the years. And so I wanted to ask, what does that community look like for you now?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and which brings to mind the name. So when I moved here, I decided that I wanted to start coaching again and open up to coach more. And I thought maybe I should change the name of Blue Fire. And I did. I had actually come up with another name that I was going to use. And the more I thought about it, that Blue Fire is still such an important part of my life. And those people are still a part of my life. And so keeping the name actually was a really important thing. So there's a couple people that have some Blue Fire ink. They have some tattoos also. So I felt like it just needed to stay.
Yeah, that's
And I
very
think,
permanent. We can't change it now.
yeah, the community is still there. In as I was saying, people who are still friends, people I'm still friends with. It's not, and in the past when we had the teams and everything, it's not much. I was actually just looking through some of the pictures of the Christmas party we had at the gym. I think that was before you joined, and it was a lot of people, and so wonderful to bring all those people together physically. It doesn't look like that so much now, and coaching is different for me now. It was more in person then. Now it's more online. Um, but I feel that sense of community. A couple years ago, one of my athletes was down in Tucson and visiting friends, and we went out for a run. And so it's just things like that those bonds are still there, which is really special. And then we also have our social media presence, and so we're still just talking about what that's looking like, but it's still it kind of, I think, shifted as many other things shifted after COVID, of what communities look like. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also for us for coaching and what we have talked about, what we want Blue Fire to be and represent, two words keep coming up for us. And those two words are longevity and joy. And so I was hoping you could say a little words about what that means to you right now in coaching.
Yeah. Well, I think each of us brought a word, but I think they both mean a lot to both of us. And you had talked about longevity, but that clicked for me. I'm 51 years old and now been doing endurance sports for quite a while. Well, since I was in my 30s, actually younger than that, since I was in my 20s. So it's been quite a few years. Um, and it's something I want to be doing for many, many years to come. And so for me, that's finding ways to be healthy in the sport, and so that my body has the strength to do it. And then the joy part, I think some of that for me comes from those days where I was kind of at the end of doing triathlon, and that I realized I wasn't finding as much joy in it, and that really needed to be there. And for me, I was just getting so serious and caught up in kind of some minuscule things that weren't as important. And so I always want to have that joy. I want my athletes to have the joy that they find in their own ways, and the joy, because I think everyone has different ways that endurance sports brings joy to their life. So I want to help my athletes find that. How about you, Courtney?
Yeah, so we said like longevity was one of my first words I thought of. And for me, that means approaching the sport and adventure and movement in a way that you can do it for years to come. And I just did the Pacific Crest Trail this past summer. So the hike from Mexico to Canada. And while I was on that trail, I met an 80-year-old doing the trail. And all I thought to myself was, that's who I want to be when I grow up. And I see people doing these long distance running races in their 70s, 80s, and it just reminds me there's a way to do this, that we can make it a part of our life. And then where that joy comes in is if the movement and adventure and running is bringing you joy, that's what's going to get you to come back to it. And so running is hard, but there's ways to find joy in it. And so that joy is going to look different for everyone. But allowing yourself to change how you're approaching adventuring and movement allows you to adapt how you're going to find joy in that. For example, the transition from triathlon to long distance running, like that triathlon served its purpose, found joy in doing it then. But then it kind of lost its joy, and we found something else that we enjoyed in movement. And so I think it's always an active process of evaluating for yourself what you're getting out of this sport. And if you find those pieces that are bringing you happiness in it, I think that's what will make it a long-term activity. And so then that's what comes into it for me as an athlete and also me as a coach, because I want to help people train in a way that they can do this for a really long time, but also find joy in running and whatever movement that makes sense for them. Because again, if we're finding joy in it, we're going to stay here for a while.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Very good. So we're talking about joy. So I think this is a good place to get into. Let's bring coaching and joy together, because it's something that we really appreciate doing as far as being coaches and helping people with that. What joys, Courtney, do you find out of coaching?
Yeah. So for me, I have a scientific background in physics, not in physiology or anything related to running. But having that science background, I have a lot of interest in diving into the science of running, the science of nutrition, the science of healing your body and injury and that sort of thing. And so one thing coaching gives me the opportunity to do is dive into those topics. And so that's something I've been having a lot of fun with recently, especially reading through a book called Rebound, which focuses on having a stronger mental resilience in sports and injury recovery, which we'll talk about more in future podcasts, I'm sure. And then I just really enjoy working with athletes, and I get a lot of joy from their success and when they're doing well and helping them problem solve different aspects. And so I think that's one of the things that brought me to coaching, is also just the problem solving side of working with an athlete who is in their own space in life. They have a job, they have obligations, and all these things come into play when training. And I get to problem solve with them to figure out how to make training something that they look forward to and enjoy doing. Because, when life gets busy, sometimes training can become a burden and you don't look forward to it. So how can we work with athletes to make them excited to do these things? And so that's kind of where joy comes in for me in coaching aspect. And what about you?
I love that. I feel similar of walking alongside of people, or we could say running, or whatever pace we're at, right? One thing that comes to my mind is that I'll lay out the plan for the week, and we all know that life happens, right? We get sick, we're tired, something comes up. It always happens every week, and that's part of why I think people choose to have a coach. And so when I get a call or a text from an athlete, of whatever the question has been throughout the years, there's been a lot of interesting ones, that this is happening today. What do I do with my workout today? How can we rework the week? Because our job isn't just in setting up the week, but then it's helping people navigate through it so that you get to the end of the week getting something valuable. I think every workout has a purpose, and even the rest day, and I'm sure we'll get into more of that on future episodes. But I think that is just like walking alongside of people, talking them through things. I love the pre-race and going through all of those details, even in the weeks to come before a race, when we're talking about what nutrition's looking like, and working out all the details if it's, say, a race someone's traveling to, just navigating all those details that we've been through before, and they've probably been through before too, but it's just nice to have someone to talk through that with. And then when someone's doing an event, I just think, I remember early on in coaching thinking to myself, okay, I'm definitely in the right place being a coach, because I almost feel more joy when an athlete is doing an event than when I'm doing my own event. I think it's kind of a different kind of joy. Like they both exist, but it isn't anything that is making the name of Blue Fire. It's just I know that how hard they have worked. I know they're all their personal sacrifices, and so to see them be able to complete what they've started out to do, that's amazing to me. I wanted to ask you, I was thinking about this too, is one of my joys also is helping people with their goals, which we're going to talk about more in the next episode. And one of them is knowing our why. And so as a coach, though, we also have whys of why do we coach? And, we were talking about the history of Blue Fire. And one thing I didn't share in that was my first experience as an athlete having a coach was not good. I wanted to do a marathon. I think I was in my 20s, my early 20s. And I started with one of those fundraising groups. And I think it was in 95? I think it was 95. Could have been 98. It's such a long time ago. But I started with this group and doing fundraising, and I met this coach, and it was just a really unhealthy relationship. And this person really took advantage of his position as a coach for me and other people that were involved in that. And so when I decided to start coaching, I really wanted to have an environment where people could be safe as athletes and just be in a safe coaching relationship. And so that really was my first why of coaching, and one of my biggest whys of coaching. And then also throughout the years, other things have been added to that, which have included helping people just on that road to completing whatever goal that they have. How about you, Courtney? What's your whys for coaching, or maybe a couple of them? I think we all have a lot.
Yeah. So the first one that comes to mind for me is the community aspect of it. So I have done sport through, high school, college, that sort of thing. And it just keeps being a place for me to have, it keeps being a place for me to have community and support. And now that I am graduated off into the real world, trying to do jobs and all that stuff, I just wanted a way to keep me connected. And working with Blue Fire, that has been such a wonderful community for me since I began as a junior athlete. And so getting to be a coach, I think, is a really wonderful way for me to stay connected to people. A couple of the people I'm working with right now, they hiked the Pacific Crest Trail with me. And it just gives me an excuse to chat with them every week. And so I really enjoy that aspect of being a coach. And then I could technically get that aspect of community as an athlete. So for me, the coaching side of it comes into view when thinking about what athletics have done for me. Mm-hmm. I have found so much joy and so much mindfulness through running and walking and hiking and movement. And the opportunity to share those kind of strategies and that kind of lifestyle, I think, is something that is really important to me. And so that's where the coaching side of it definitely comes in.
You were touching on this, and I was thinking about it as you were talking, as that the things we've learned, how we can we can help teach other people the things that we've learned and share those lessons with them. Um, I think that's one thing that I love is to be able to say, oh yeah, I put in this work, and I remember how much it hurt the last 10 miles of a 50K. And so let's talk about how we're going to navigate through that for you. Because it's going to hurt, and I'm not going to sugarcoat and tell you that it's not going to. And so I think that's so important too, is to be able to reshare. You know, we don't just hold on to that information for ourselves, but coaching is such a great way to be able to share those things that we've learned through, you know, through our experiences, and whether you call them successes or failures or anything like that. I think they're all just experiences that can help someone else in their journey. As coaches, I think so that was 2009. So I've been doing this for a few years now. I think that I've learned a lot also as a coach, and whether that's through my own experience with athletes, or through just, you know, reading or taking classes. One of the things that really comes to mind for me is I think about the coach I was in the early years of Blue Fire, and what I've learned, what athletes have taught me along the way. Maybe that's feedback. I think one thing when I was first a coach and I was learning how to create training plans for triathletes, and I very much felt like you have to stick to the plan. You have to stick to the plan. And it was really hard for me, as I was saying before, you know, realizing, oh yeah, things happen in life, right? When my kids were little, I knew some of that, but I didn't know fully the extent of it that I know now that they're graduated from high school. And I really struggled with that, and that was something that I grew into. It took me some years though to figure that out, and that actually that's where so much happens in the life happening things. Instead of me thinking, you didn't get your workout in today, it now goes to, okay, what can we do? How can I help you? How can we navigate this week? And so what else comes to mind for you, Courtney, as you think about, you know, things you've learned, maybe even as an athlete too, and that you apply to coaching?
Yeah, I think what you said is exactly what came to mind in slightly different ways. So there's the aspect of life happening and you need to change what you're doing. And there's a power in adapting, you know, if you need to change it, that's okay. Change it and then move on, as an athlete. But the other side of it for me, I feel like I've learned a lot. And going back to the idea of joy, if you're not enjoying how you're training, then why are we doing it? You know, there's athletes out there who are, you know, racing for collegiate teams, and that's going to come with a different sets of pressures and goals. But for the most part, I mean, we're working with normal people who have everyday lives, jobs, families. And so if running's not serving you, why are you doing it? And so we get into, again, we talk about this, we get into the whys of goal setting in the next podcast. But I think finding a way to train that you enjoy is important, and being okay that it might then look different than other people. One of the things that comes up for me all the time is I hate training in the morning. This has been a thing since the beginning. There were times when Mary would bribe me with coffee to come out to swim with her. I think I would be in the little kayak to help watch you swim before our team practices with the Blue Fire Juniors. And you would get me coffee because I hated the mornings. And I always thought everyone trains in the mornings. There's this culture around like these runners who are getting up at 5 a.m. and going for their run in the dark. And in a lot of ways, that's an important thing to be able to do if that's how it fits into your life. But I have the opportunity to fit in running in the afternoons. And that's what brings me joy. And because I can fit it in there, it's okay that my training looks different than somebody else's. It's important to not compare your training and your goals to somebody else's, because it's about what is bringing you value and joy. And I think that's an important lesson I learned, because I also see on social media all these incredible professional athletes, like Courtney DeWalter, same name. I think about her all the time. And I'm like, man, I wish I could be running like that. But I have a different life, and I have a different schedule, and I have a different background, and my running looks different. And that is okay. How can I work with what I have? And so I think that's one of the most important lessons I've learned for both myself and then to apply it to coaching, is all the training plans look different. I'm working with two athletes who are training for the same race, and their training plans are very different because they have different jobs, different lives, different time commitments, different goals. So that is probably the biggest lesson, is being okay with it looking a little different.
Well, we're going to get more into goals in our next episode. I know we're really excited to talk about that, and it fits in so well because it is almost the new year.
When this comes out, it'll be the new year.
Oh, that's true. Because it is the new year. One thing I've learned is living in Tucson that because of the weather down here, that the patterns of when people are racing and training is different than what I kind of like grew up as a coach getting ready for. So it's still, I still go off like, yeah, the new year, you kind of rest in the fall. Maybe you have a big race in the fall, and then you rest a bit in the winter and the weather's bad, and then you start pressing into the spring, where down here it's like the opposite. So it's kind of wild. So anytime is always a good time to be talking about goals. So we're going to get that into more of that in our next episode. I'm really excited about that. But we want to end our time here today with a couple of questions. And we're going to have different questions for each other each week. This one is talking about goals, leading into our next discussion. So I'm going to start off asking you, Courtney, what is the least realistic goal you have had in endurance sports?
So my most unrealistic goal was I finished the Pacific Crest Trail. And before the trail, I had not been running for many months because of a knee injury that luckily I was able to rehab enough to hike the trail. I got off trail and you messaged me and you asked me if I would pace you for Javelina 100. And I, at this point, had not been running for a year and a half. And my instinct was absolutely, I have so much fitness. I can absolutely just come out there and in like 2 weeks run 20 miles with you for sure. That was probably my most unrealistic goal, because after the trail, my feet hurt so bad I couldn't even walk. It took months to be able to run again. And so I obviously did not end up running with you at Javelina. But that instinct reaction of course, I will run 20 miles with you at Javelina without having had run for a year and some, it's probably the most unrealistic goal I've had. Okay, how about you? What is your most unrealistic goal?
I just want to say I love that I was involved in your most unrealistic goal. I mean, good friends just share unrealistic goals together,
Yeah.
right? That's awesome. Okay, this comes to mind for me. I'm trying to remember all the specifics around it and what year it was. I think it was 2014. We were still living in Washington, maybe 2013. I actually had first started. I think we were living in Western Washington, and I had started to think about wanting to get into some longer distance running, and so I was looking at a race on the East Coast, which is crazy. I did not need to be going all the way to the East Coast to do a first ultra endurance event. Something happened with that, and so my training had kind of been cut short, and I didn't have a lot of training in, but I decided I can run the Seattle Marathon. And my first marathon was in Dublin, Ireland, which was incredible. I was having I think I was having some hip issue at the time for that one, so I only got up to like 16 miles. Um, Mind you, I think I was 23 years old at the time. And so jumping right into the marathon with that, that many long runs, I had a great race when I was 23. Now we'll jump forward to say I was 43, maybe somewhere in there. And I also hadn't gotten enough long runs in. And I thought, well, I've done this before. 20 years earlier, I'll be fine. And actually the race was okay. It was a little rough. It didn't I did finish. It wasn't quite what I had hoped for, but remembering that we can still have I will say wild success. I think we'll have to talk about that more at another time too, but wild success at any season in our lives. But we also don't need to compare it to another season and say like, oh, I can do what I did 10 or 20 years ago. Not to say that we can't do those things, but it might just look different for a lot of different reasons. And then the other unrealistic thing also happened in that race, or after that race, was I think it was the day after the race, I was taking the girls to the bus stop. And this was maybe 50 yards, from the end of our driveway to the bus stop. And we were late. And my unrealistic goal was that I could run the kids to the bus stop at that point when I could hardly walk. And I ended up completely injuring myself on that.
Oh.
The run to the bus stop was also very unrealistic. So I can go on and on more about, I always tell people, you cannot run after a race if your gait is impeded by your soreness level. So that was where I learned that lesson for sure. Yeah.
I like that.
Well, I think that wraps us up for today. Courtney, this is so awesome. Thank you so much. You have so much wisdom. I'm so grateful to be working with you, and that just celebrating. We had this thought of let's start working on a podcast, because I love our conversations, and I think in our conversations like today, that we can share more, pass more information along to athletes and anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is an idea that's been in the works for several years, and we're making it happen. Mm-hmm. So thank you all for joining us today, and look out for more conversations we're going to have about coaching related topics. If you'd like to learn more about Blue Fire, we have a website. Just look up Blue Fire Coaching, and then you're welcome to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Blue Fire Running. So we hope to see more of you.
Yes, and we hope that your days are filled with longevity and joy, and we'll include those things in our show notes too, all those links.
Perfect. Thank you.